Hi guys, Patrick here with goldkilns.us. What I'm doing here is I've taken the roasted material and put it in a little bucket of water here. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to pull some of the heavies out and save some of the heavies. It makes it a little more concentrated when we go into our crucible. And there's a row of magnets here taped to the bottom of the table, and it's catching that material that's highly magnetic after we roasted it, and we want to save that material. This is kind of the opposite of a placer gold thing where you want to get rid of those magnetics, but here we want to keep them because we created the magnetics when we roasted it. And so I'm saving all of it down there. I got a little catch basin in the bottom, and I got more water running along this edge of the table than I do over here, so I can stack this stuff up in this corner after I concentrate a little bit. And it's like I said, there is a little bit of free milling gold in this material, and as I've been concentrating it here, I just keep working it back, cleaning off these magnetics so it's got a place for it to go down. I've run into 2 or 3 little tiny fine pieces of gold, which is typically what's associated with that. When I clean that out, you can see those magnetic materials, or those rare earth magnets, are taped to the bottom of this little ABS table. And I just kind of keep mushing it around like that, moving these magnetics over to the other side so they kind of stay stuck over to the other side. And you can't get all of it, but I'm trying to get the majority of it. And oh, look at there. There's another little tiny piece of gold, little tiny piece of gold, little tiny piece of gold. So when you do this, it gives you a chance to see what's in your material. See if I can chase these into a little pile. I doubt if you can see them. Looks like there's 1, 2, 3, 4 little tiny, itty bitty tiny little pieces of free milling gold. But you can see the magnetics that we're after, as well as the heavier material. This heavier stuff that's sitting back here is what I want. Obviously, it's a higher concentration of Fe2, FeO, rust, or whatever after we did our roast. And that material I want to save for the crucible. I'm not going to throw any of it away, because even the stuff that's washing down there has still got some values in it. But when you do this, like so, if there is any free milling gold in your ore, you can't see any of it in those rocks. Every once in a while you'll see a little tiny piece underneath of a 10 power hand lens or something like that. But this gives you a chance to actually get a kind of a visual on it if there's any there. And it's like I say, I'll just move those magnetics over to one side, you put them in this pile right here, and leave a clear shot for those lighter materials and sandy materials, the gang material, to get away from the table. It's tedious, slow, but it's like I said, we're poor boys here, so we kind of do things the slow way. Still effective. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get rid of a lot of the gang material and the lighter materials off, so that when we do our first crucible run, we catch a lot of the values to begin with. And I just kind of keep mushing it around like so until pretty much everything runs away. That's the lighter colored material. What I'm after is this real dark red oxidized sulfides that we created when we roasted it. Once again, what we did was we drove the sulfur atoms away, and they replaced them with an oxygen molecule. And when it replaces them with an oxygen molecule, I'll chase some of this stuff over so you can see how much of this magnetic material there is that's getting captured. And obviously I'm going a lot faster than I should, but I want you to be able to see it. This is really hard to film. Anyway, there's that material that we created by driving the sulfur atoms away and turning it into an iron oxide in whatever form that it happens to be. So that right there will have much more concentration of our gold, which is what we're looking for, than this material down here that's not magnetic. I'll just go ahead and chase this back up and just keep piling it up in this corner. And this is kind of a slow, tedious process. And once I get all of it run through, let me get another scoop out here. Once I get all of it run through, then I'll take even a little more time and I'll move this over out of here over into this faster stream of water. And all you do is you just tip your table a little bit. Sometimes it takes quite a while to get these little tables set up to what you want to do with them. But the more you use them, the more familiar you get with them. And move those magnetics out of there so that material can get down. I know it's difficult to film and it's difficult to see. Oh, what? Right there. Another little itty bitty teeny itsy bitsy piece of gold. Another little tiny itty bitty piece of gold. That gold's way less than 30 mesh, probably 40 or 50 mesh. Little tiny stuff. But that's what we're doing, is we're looking and seeing if we can identify any of the free milling gold that happens to be captured in the ore. Now the free milling gold in that rock is a small part of what's actually in that ore. The majority of it was tied up in a arsenopyrite type of a sulfide, which we've converted into an oxide. And I'll pull these magnetics away again and just kind of work all this heavier material up into this corner and save it, because that's heavier, that's where your concentrates are. And I'm running this pretty fast, but I'll kind of flop some of that water away from there and that material so you can see these magnetics that we're catching. Now, we used a little jaw crusher to do this, and since we used a little jaw crusher to do this, once we roasted the ore and converted it from a sulfide to an oxide, which a large portion of it becomes magnetic, we want to capture those magnetics, because that's obviously the iron arsenic division before we quote unquote roasted it and turned it into an oxide. If you're using a chain mill, or if you're using one of those chain mills, and try this with a chain mill, there's so much of that crusher that comes off of the chains and beats it all up to where the material you're catching down there is largely just a whole bunch of worn out crusher materials from the chains and the impactors and blah blah blah. And that's the reason I was using that little jaw crusher, is to minimize the amount of tramp iron, so to speak, that you would get when you crush your material as well as any of those little tiny pieces of gold, which are just super fine, have been mashed out and they're a little bit flatter. There's another one right there. And that's a lot flatter and a lot larger appearing than it was when it was in the rock, because it's been mashed out. And it makes it a lot flatter. So when I do this, I prefer to use the jaw crusher on a small scale rather than a chain mill, because you get just too much cramp iron. And once you've got material that's as heavy as this little tiny piece of gold right here at the tip of my brush that's staying back here, that's about as good as you're going to get. There's another little itty bitty piece right there. Those little tiny itsy bitsy pieces of gold weigh a heck of a lot more, specifically gravity wise, than does the material that we're trying to concentrate. So if you got material that's staying up here that's as heavy as that little tiny piece of gold or close to it, then that's where your values are, is it's in this heavy material here. And I'll sweep those magnetics away. I just kind of sweep them away and leave them piled up in this one corner, so we leave a clear path for a lot of that lighter material to go on down into the catch basin. It's like I said, I don't throw any of this stuff away, I keep it all. And I got a little catch basin down here that catches everything that goes on beyond. So it's a slow, tedious process, but when it comes to putting material in a crucible, the more value you could put in the crucible when you do your litharge flux and cupel your prill off, the more gold is going to be in it. So this step is necessary, at least by some form of this step. And quite a few magnetics showing up down there. A lot of the stuff is highly magnetic, and some of it's pretty weakly magnetic as well. So you can take a little more time when you go through what you catch down there and do a little better job than I'm just flipping it out of here real fast. And once again, right there at the tip of my brush, I'll bring it back. There's another little tiny piece of free milling gold that's been flattened out when it was crushed in the jaw crusher, and makes it more visible and more readily capturable. This material up in here, the specific gravity of iron is around, I think around 11, something like that. And the specific gravity of gold is almost 20. So that gold weighs twice as much as the material that we're actually capturing, comparatively speaking, if the particle sizes are the same. So that little tiny piece of gold sticking there meant that the material that was surrounding it was awful heavy too. I'm going to run this down here again and float this around a little bit so you can see those magnets right there capturing that magnetic material. Like I say, it's kind of just the absolute opposite of what you're doing if you're cleaning up placer gold. We want those magnetics because we made them. Nature didn't make them, we did. And that's where our values that will be, that were tied up in the arsenopyrite, which was a sulfide. We now turned it into an oxide, which means the gold that's tied up in there is still locked up with the iron, but we're going to liberate that when we go through the crucible process. So, kind of tedious, and sitting out here in the sun right now, kind of hot. Gonna be 108 here today. Another nice day in Arizona. But, oh, look at there. I'm getting down to the bottom of this thing, all the heavy stuff sitting on the bottom. Look at that. 1, 2, 3. I don't know if you can see them or not. 1, 2, 3 little pieces of free milling gold. A little, even a tinier one. God, that's got to be at least 50 mesh sitting right there. Oh, we'll scoop them over here. And we'll run this stuff back over here. Leave it piled up over here where these other magnets are. One thing about this ABS table is you can tape those rare earth magnets underneath of there. And you can go through this process because it's a plastic table. And you can use the magnetic effect to further concentrate your crushed and roasted ore. And just about got through it here. Try and keep it out here in the sun a little bit. It's shady and shadowy around here. It's pretty early in the morning. The sun's still pretty low. I wouldn't be out here if it was 108 degrees. It's like I think about 8 o'clock in the morning, 8:30 maybe, and it's probably 90. Wouldn't be a hot one. So that's how step 2 of the concentration process, once it's roasted, is working. As you can see, I just keep mushing it back, bringing it back. None of that material goes anywhere. It doesn't get away from us. It'll stack up down there against that magnetic material, and you can work it back. You can let it sit there for a little bit by itself, and it will pull a lot of that lighter material off. And then once it's pretty well cleaned up, I just keep it stacked over into this corner here. And just about out. Just about out of material. Maybe down at the very bottom of this little bucket there might be a piece of gold yet. We'll see. This little table just works incredible for cleaning up placer gold. 30, 40 mesh, 50 mesh. Just isn't even a concern. Didn't see any in that scoop. Move these magnetics over here again. Drag this stuff back. Bring it over into the faster stream of water, which is going down this side of the table. Oh, look at that. There he is. A little tiny piece of gold hiding down here in this little divot. Get over here in this pile. Okay. This is about the end of it here, so I'm just going to kind of mix it up. You always put your material in water prior to concentrating it on the table, because if it's dry, the desirable materials float away. That's the very bottom of the bucket here. Let's see if we see any little chunks of gold hanging out here. One little tiny guy right there. So, just a quick demo. Like I said, this is very tedious, very slow, but very beneficial. Because what you want to do is you want to melt stuff that's got gold in it. You don't want to melt stuff that doesn't have gold in it. And when I get to this point, I'll just move some of this material back into that stream. Move these magnetics out and just kind of let it work down. And there we go. Let's screw around here a little bit and see if we can. It's not going anywhere because the magnetics have got it blocked up against those magnets, so you don't have to worry about it getting away from you. Let's scoot a little bit of it out of here and see if we can find any more little free milling pieces of gold in here. Yeah. Oh, I think I've seen one there. Yeah, look at that. There's two more. There you go. Two more little guys right there. Oh, there's another one. There's another one. Oh. Anyway, that's how it works. Scoot all this stuff up and save it. Get over in the corner here, little pieces of gold, because you're going in the crucible to get together and come out as a big piece of gold here. So I'll dink around here a little more and get this cleaned up. And I know this gets tedious after a while because this is just tedious as it is. So once I get everything all cleaned up, once we get everything back in a real nice concentrated state, and we're ready to do our first fire, obviously, I'll get back to you. Hang on.